Hey, Kris, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Randy?
Excellent. And thanks everybody for watching. This is episode number 59 of Tech Sales Insights. Hey, Nour, how you doing?
Good to see you, Randy.
Good to be seen. Kris is up in Whistler. I'm working out at Beaver Creek. And Nour, where are you?
Back in Atlanta for at least a day.
Atlanta. All right. There you go. Kris Hartvigsen is our guest today. He is CEO of Duly. We are sponsored also by Sendoso, so making sure we get their plug in. Sendoso is a leading sending platform. They help companies stand out by giving them new ways to engage with customers throughout the buyer's journey. They integrate into Salesforce, so it's amazing. I look at it as I'd call old school swag, but they're doing amazing things. And last round valuation for them was 650, so must be doing something right. So I first met Kris, we think back in September of 20 when he was doing a seed round. I didn't know much, but I heard, wow, you could help reps save time in implementing and typing everything in for Salesforce, and at the same time by making the notes kind of seen by everybody on the team, can really embrace more team selling. So kind of a no-brainer, and we'll talk a little bit in terms of the tremendous success that they've had. So, Kris, really excited to have you here. Maybe you can start off talking a little bit about your background.
Yeah, thanks, Randy. So funny you mentioned swag with Sendoso. In one of my first gigs in tech sales, it was back in the 90s, and we were at a trade show, and everybody was giving out swag back then, and one in particular was Zip, and they were giving away these little clicker things. And so I learned what swag actually stood for. It's an acronym for stuff we all get. And at that trade show, because of that Zip drive clicker, we changed it to swag, which is shit we all get. End up with too much of it. My background, sales. I've been in sales my entire career. I started in hardware sales, as I mentioned. Grew with the company. We became the most profitable region for the business. It was a graphics board manufacturer called Matrox. They were at the time the biggest player in the space, and then along came this little tiny company called NVIDIA, which many of us have probably heard of. And obviously the rest of that is history. Moved back into the West Coast and started working in software after selling my previous business to a company that was traded on NASDAQ. So as soon as I got into software, I fell in love with it. I started to migrate my intentions and my thinking towards SaaS, well ahead of SaaS. We built this product in the early 2000s, which was used to track the animation industry, because an episode of The Simpsons, for example, used to take 26 boxes of paper to produce, and we made it so that entire process was digitized. Had I known at the time what we'd built, it probably would have been a different story, but we basically built Asana before Asana was built. And so that began my SaaS journey. Did 9 years of Vision Critical, ran international sales, lived in Australia, lived in the UK, was responsible for some of the biggest wins in company history, was triple quota when I was an individual contributor. And we grew Europe 47x in 1 year while I was there. So that was a pretty big run. And one thing that I realized in all of my different sales roles is that while I had a really good system to keep myself on top of deals, it was not scalable. And it certainly didn't make it so that anything made it back into the CRM, although anybody who wanted to know anything about any of my deals would have great visibility. So I looked at my system and said, there's something in this that I think is really interesting. And I wonder if other people are suffering from the same fate as me, because nobody ever got fired for not updating the competitor field in Salesforce when their manager asked them why it wasn't updated. So I started to look and say, okay, what if there was just an easier way to get information to rapidly disseminate across the entire business by looking at the way that salespeople actually worked, as opposed to making them go to this digital filing cabinet in the cloud, which is, your CRM of choice. Doesn't have to be Salesforce, it can be anything. And if we could align ourselves with that system of work and make it so that we could build a beautiful, usable SaaS product around it, we might be able to get that information to the stakeholders that needed it. And that is really the genesis for Duly.
Oh, and Duly, hopefully it's okay to share. You maybe want to say how you came up with the name?
Yeah. So I lived in Australia, as I mentioned. And when I was in Oz, I had a salesperson that worked for me. And he would come back after every weekend. He was a very adventurous person. He'd be like, "Holy dooly, mate, you would not believe my weekend." And so holy dooly in Australia is the equivalent of holy shit. And so when I moved back to Canada after my stint abroad, I brought back two terms with me: reckon. I reckon this, I reckon that. And the other one is holy dooly. And when I was coming up with the business, my eldest niece was also nannying my, at the time, 1-year-old daughter. And she came up to me one day and said, "Uncle Kris, you say holy dooly all the time." And I said, "Yeah, duly noted." And that was the epiphany for the name of the business, Dooley. And if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense because we get rid of the shit people don't want to do.
Great. And maybe highlight a little bit more in terms of the business. And I know firsthand it's going great.
Yeah, things are going really well. Yeah, we're scaling at a record pace. You've probably seen us in the news a little bit. We did 3 rounds of funding in under 7 months last year. One that we were exploring and pushing for, and the other 2 were inbound, and quite a big volume of inbound. So went from a company of 4 people in the 2020 timeframe to now we're up to 60 and scaling, like I said, a pretty incredible clip.
Wow, it's fantastic. So what about the theme here is all about PLG, product-led growth, easy for me to say, which you're very passionate about. You've had tremendous success. So tell us a little bit about why you started off with, maybe first define for those that don't know what it is, and then maybe kind of why you started off with that as a model.
Yeah, look, I think that PLG, product-led growth, is one of the hottest topics in the SaaS world. Everybody wants their product to go viral across an organization or across a community of people that are like-minded. And really what PLG is focused on is establishing a link to the end user, understanding their pain intimately, and building solutions that they personally will find and adopt, and then disseminate and distribute across the rest of the business. So in the sales tech space in particular, PLG has not really been a hot topic because you have to connect back to things like Salesforce and other systems of record. And that's kind of like asking somebody to connect to the corporate bank account. So, we came at it with a slightly different angle, and PLG has actually worked really well for us. Users find the product, we call that a product qualified lead, and start using the product. And then of course, over time that starts to develop into these communities of users within different companies. And for us, the beauty of that is much like what happened with Slack. When somebody leaves or they know somebody that works at a different organization, our product jumps the tracks and goes with them or goes to the person that they know at the other company. So we've seen quite a bit of movement of our product just by means of what we do and the pains that we solve for. We solve for end user problems. End users do not want to spend their days doing administrative work. They want to spend their days selling.
So Kris, great to have you. Randy speaks very highly of you and the team. We all know a lot of CROs who are under increasing pressure to do more with less.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm pretty educated, but I'm struggling trying to understand what problem are you solving for that CRO to justify an investment? What issues are you running into that you guys directly address? Are you saving keystrokes by the reps? Are you helping? And I spent some time on your website. I'm trying to understand kind of the positioning. Are you better connecting intelligence from different parts of the organization? Tell me what problem you're solving.
Yeah. So it's interesting you asked the question because we solve a different problem for different users, right? If you're an end user, what do you want to spend your time doing? Selling. And if I'm your manager and I see you updating the CRM midday, am I happy about that, or am I wishing you were selling? I'm wishing you were selling. So we keep people in their high value mode all day, every day. But the side effect of that is the more important part, because the CRO cares about the information and the predictability of the business. They care about the performance of the business. And without having deep insight into opportunities and the information that's helping you to assess whether deals are real or not real, you're kind of putting your finger in the wind a little bit and trying to make your best guess based on what you're learning from management, what you're learning from the reps and their forecast. Well, the forecast is based on an assumption, on a prediction. And so when you want to stress test that, that's when you need data. And if the data isn't getting into the hands of the people that need it, what are you doing? You're going to a Zoom call now. We used to whiteboard them in boardrooms. We used to whiteboard deals, right? And we would whiteboard the solutions to those deals. And so now we're doing that over Zoom, and we're only getting a fraction of the coaching in that we want to get in. So we're helping people optimize the amount of time they can coach. We're helping reps get information to the leadership team and the rest of the business in near real time without adding additional work to their plate, right? So seller stays in high value mode. Business is more informed. Information is making it into the deepest reaches of the organization. So you can imagine, I joked about nobody updates the competitor field in Salesforce. Well, if you're a product marketer, you really care about that. You really care about understanding whether it was company X or company Y that beat you out in a deal, because that's going to help you to modify the playbook, to think about the battle cards, all of those different things. If you're only doing those key deal reviews, win-loss reviews once a quarter, then you're not doing things in real time. We can do things in real time based on, the product marketers subscribing to keywords that are happening inside of deals that are now being pushed deeply into the organization. And in real time, they're getting updates saying, hey, FYI, Nike is in this deal. And so, if we're going to beat them, we got to come up with a new Adidas trainer, right? Whatever the analogies you want to use. So velocity of information was the biggest interesting side effect that we heard from sales leaders. Was it's not just about the comprehensiveness of the information, it's about organizational velocity, being able to perform at speed. And that's the name of the game now. Speed is a big part of how you win deals now.
Got it. And who do you compete with? Who else in your deals? Who else are they looking at to say that seems similar to Dooley? Who else is in that space or a similar space as yours?
Yeah, look, there are a number of players that are trying to get into the space, and there's a number of people that kind of like dovetail into parts of what we do. But in terms of like the complete playbook and the ability to have a workspace that's distributing information to the rep and pushing information to the rest of the business, we don't have a direct competitor. I would say we have indirects that we'll run into in opportunities. Status quo is the biggest competitor that we have, right? People just going, look, we just paid for Salesforce. There's no way I'm giving you a tool that sits on top of Salesforce to help you do your job better. And the reality is you do want to pay that money because you actually want the information, not the tool. It's a conduit, right? So, people will ask us, well, how does that compare to Gong or Chorus? And the answer is one is post-game, tape review. One is live in-game. And will you get compared to Salesforce? I know, isn't this just updating fields? Well, no, it's not. It's not just a better layout. This is a better system.
So just to follow up on that, what have you seen in the last 2 years of this pandemic that you feel like it's either a tailwind for Dooley and your efforts, or I'm going to flip the coin, what could potentially be a headwind for where you guys are trying to go and scaling the business?
Well, I think that the natural headwinds are always going to be competitors coming in or some of the bigger players, layering their platform to be able to do some of the things that we do. We've got a pretty comprehensive solution now, so it's not like you can do that overnight, particularly when you layer in the playbooks component. But the tailwind is equally really interesting. So when the pandemic first hit, I actually thought we were in big trouble as an organization. I think that the only company that was like celebrating openly was probably Zoom, right? Where everybody was suddenly going, oh, there's only one way we're going to stay in contact with one another now. It's Zoom, and probably Slack. And so we saw budgets getting pushed. We saw people freezing their spends. And then it's kind of like the Grinch Who Stole Christmas time, I guess, because we just celebrated Christmas for some of us anyway. The Who's came out of Whoville or out of their houses in Whoville and started celebrating. And the equivalent in our world was reps were going, okay, I am now more pressured than ever to get deals closed. And that's a stress on me. And I have budgets being frozen all over my deals as well. So I need to spend less time doing administrative work and more time focused on the things that will actually impact my paycheck and whether or not I'm going to have a job next year. So we started to see our sign-up rates going through the roof. And then the investor community turned and said, okay, we think that the future of work, which Dooley is a big part of, we think the future of work just became the now of work. So within a span of 3 months, we went from, oh no, this isn't looking very good, to, whoa, holy dooly, right? The world has really pivoted on its axis, and we are one of the beneficiaries of it. So yeah, user signups went up, and deal flow went up, and all our renewals came through, and most of them expanded. So I think that we kind of live in this maybe a bit of a mini bubble in the SaaS community, in that a lot of us are solving problems that are related to remote work in some way, shape, or form, or the ability to do distributed work. And so we ended up on the right side of this.
Oh, that's great. So just a reminder for those watching, we have Kris Hartvigsen, the CEO of Duly. Feel free to come in. I think you can, I know you can post any comments or ask any questions. And we are sponsored by Sendoso. So thanks for that. Jesse saying Duly is amazing. That's fantastic.
Jesse was one of our very first users. I still remember when Jesse started using the product.
There you go.
And a great example of somebody who changed jobs and brought the product with them.
There you go. Fantastic. And we're talking. This morning I talked to Rick Ruskin, who's CRO of Effectual, and I think it's a really easy elevator pitch. And obviously I don't get in the weeds, but it was, hey, do you want to have your reps save time with all the crap they got to do with Salesforce entries? And then do you want to have a better way to communicate within your team? And he's like, yeah, I definitely want interest. So I know we already made that connection, but getting back on the whole PLG motion, maybe talk a little bit more about that in terms of the importance for you of kind of the user buyer, kind of how that works. And then at what point do you have, do you say, okay, we want to go up higher to the executive level to maybe get more of a broader ELA?
Yeah, it's interesting. So the user buyer is terminology that's fairly universal, but I think it first came to light through Miller Hyman strategic selling: the user buyer, technical buyer, economic buyer, and the coach, right? The four main buying influences. And traditionally, we've gone after the economic buyer and the technical buyer as the main two that were the decision makers, but they're not the adopters anymore. They are not the ones that have to actually use whatever it is you invest in. And so over time, and this is why the PLG motion has taken hold, over time, that user buyer has gained importance because they're the ones that are hands-on with the solution. So you can buy Salesforce, you can buy whatever tools you want, you can buy Microsoft Word, whatever the tools are that you're going to purchase for your organization. If people don't use them, that is a dead investment, or one that is not going to yield the ROI that you had hoped for. So by focusing on the user and focusing on their pains, while still being mindful of what the business needs behind the scenes, you still have to have like a business outcome. You can actually create something that is the equivalent of what you would want to have on page one of your mobile device as a personal experience, right? So we've really overemphasized the importance of like good design, exceptional user experiences, solving end user pain, and through that, we get people that are end users that sign up for the product, which is a great starting point. One, you have a user that wants to use your product, wants to, not has to, wants to. Major difference, right? And in many cases needs to, because they are now under pressure and constraints. So when we see a user sign up for our product, that's a product qualified lead for us. And when we see multiple users start to organically use the product within an organization, meaning that it's spreading across the business, which is how you want things to go in the product-led growth world, then we will promote that to a product qualified opportunity, right? And that PQO is something that we will then flip over to a proper sales motion. So we don't go end to end. Smaller deals, sure, we'll swipe your credit card and away we go, right? 2, 3, 4, 5 users. But for the bigger deals where you know that there is going to be pushback from sales ops, from the heads of revenue, et cetera, we will then initiate a full sales motion. So it's a great example on the small side. Jesse purchased it on his own, put his credit card down, and away he went, right? On the bigger side, we have companies that have 300, 400, 500 users and more that sign up for the product as an individual, where we learn the pain of the organization. We learn the problems. We talk to the end users. We understand intimately how their sales motion works. And then we can then flip that and talk to the heads of sales, go, okay, here's what I know about your organization right now. I've already done my homework. I did it because your users are using the product. They told me a couple things. And here's how I know we can solve them, right? Or here's how we are solving them. Here's what that means to you in terms of a financial impact, right? So then it's traditional sales with a product-led or a user-led entry point.
Kris, I read TechCrunch that your last round, and Randy mentioned as well, cup of swift rounds, right? Where B comes pretty quickly right after A, and you got several investors who are really excited about your business model. What do you attribute that to? What are they anticipating as not necessarily the end game, but the next evolution of Dooley? What are they?
Look, I think that if you have an end game of we can update Salesforce faster, that's not a very good end game. It really isn't, because I don't think Salesforce is sitting on their hands at home going, I guess that they're just going to win out on the update Salesforce faster motion. They're figuring stuff out. We see their product management team signs up for our product all the time. So we know that they're researching and trying to understand how we do some of the things that we do. I think that the end game and why people got excited is the vision of what the future of work looks like, right? So I want you to think for a second about what Slack really is. Slack is a stream, right? Or a series of streams. Each channel represents a stream of consciousness. And as soon as you take your fishing line out of the water, what happens? The stream blows by you and suddenly you've missed all the fish, right? And you got to like rewind and try to figure out what happened, right? Your opportunities, which is really just a code name for project, right? Like we call it an opportunity. It is a project. Your project is just with external influences. Your opportunities are like a pond, right? You're filling it up. You're trying to figure out like what's in the pond, and some of the ponds are going to be fruitful and some of them aren't. So we operate in that pond area and help people to manage their projects better in a way that's different from Asana, in a way that's different from the traditional project management solutions. We are helping people to coalesce on information and distribute that information to and from each of the stakeholders that's involved in those projects. We do it today for opportunities and for leads and for customer success. So you can expect to see a broader reach from us over time in terms of the things that we do. And it's very much the future of work that's just coming into the now, as I mentioned before, David.
We've got a lot of hyper growth companies that are members of the sales community. I want to switch gears and talk about your leadership as the CEO for a second. What have you found to be the most exhilarating in this journey so far? And same thing, what have you found to be the most challenging?
Yeah, I think that the most exhilarating has probably, it's been a really weird couple of years, obviously, with the throw a pandemic and everything. We raised a seed round in September of 2020. My dad died 3 days after funding, which was super shocking and upsetting. Obviously, it doesn't really, you shouldn't have those two, elation and elation and sadness, emotions so close together. But while that was happening, my funding started to, or my company started to make rounds in the funding community. And so we weren't soliciting anything for beyond the seed. We were pretty happy with the seed round. But again, with that future work being brought into the now, we started to see a lot of inbound interest. So we did, another round 6 weeks after my dad passed away. And then 4 months after that, we did another round. And I think that the excitement around that was all just based on where the market is going. And so I would say that's my exhilarating thing. My challenging thing, look, I also think we're in a really weird time right now where you got people who, before they were sort of geographically beholden to an organization. And now, I mean, we've gone from geo-specific to remote. And so you completely change the toolkit to support that. But you also have to recognize that your entire organization is now recognizing that they have optionality. Where what used to be something where you had to work in the Bay in order to get the job in the Bay, well, now you can work out of Nashville or somewhere in Warsaw. It doesn't matter. So I would say that, the idea of the Great Resignation isn't just an idea, it's a reality. And I would say that is sort of combined with the fact that, companies are getting heavily capitalized, which means that people are almost bidding for talent right now, which is, I think, is a dangerous mechanism, to bid people up to a ridiculous number, but it's happening. And so you have to be part of that game.
We've got a great question from your biggest fan, Jesse, asking, you spent $2,200 on Google ads, which is relatively low compared to other big SaaS firms. Do you plan to increase or decrease this spend next quarter or year?
Fish where the fish are. I don't think Google ads are where the fish are. Nobody's looking up how to update Salesforce faster or anything like that. We haven't seen it work in a meaningful way. Social has been much more fruitful for us. You'll notice that we are very active in channels like Sales Humor and the Daily Sales and a series of others that are where we position ourselves more to the end user problems. So those are more like sales meme specific, talking about some of the challenges and trying to make them relatable to people. And then, when we go to LinkedIn more broadly, we are much more targeted with our reach. So yeah, social has been much more fruitful for us. There's a huge shift in the way that people are spending money. Like we did a trade show earlier or late in last year. I wouldn't say the trade shows are necessarily where it's at these days. It was great for us, coming out party, if you will, but the volume of people that came by, now we're still in a COVID time, so that's going to change things around a little bit, but you'll see that there are far better ways to spend your money.
Let's kind of continue that. Sales and marketing. Randy Seidel's got a love-hate relationship with sales and marketing. Talk about how those functions can work really well together, from you generating a lead or opportunity for Dooley all the way through closing it, and whether growing that to a bigger opportunity.
Yeah, so I actually think there's a holy trinity between sales, marketing, and product, right? So your sales motion has to start in the product when you're a product-led growth company. Marketing has to be able to take the baton and continue to run with it and make sure that every single thing that you're doing in marketing is sort of connected, if you will. And all of those things need to support the sales function, whether it be the things you do in product. And this doesn't really change between enterprise sales and product-led growth, by the way. The things you're doing in product need to connect to how salespeople are selling the solution, right? I think that you need to have total symbiosis there between sales and marketing in order for you to perform well. So it should be seamless. It's just different touch points along the same journey. It's just an expansion of it. I would even factor in customer success into that to almost round it out and have it so that you have the storytelling. It was one of the biggest epiphanies for me. I came from a company where CS was almost like walled away from the salespeople, and you couldn't get access to the customer stories, the customer challenges, the customer pains. How's a salesperson supposed to sell without knowing that stuff? How's product supposed to be able to inform future product decisions without being able to know that stuff, right? So they're kind of like the glue in the story, if you will.
Is there a channel play in your future?
I think so. I think your ASP largely dictates whether or not a channel play works for you or not. It's a lot of people that work in channel, they won't get out of bed for smaller than X dollars in revenue for them, right? Or income for them. So I would say as our ASP continues to scale, there's one more wild card in that. So as the ASP continues to scale, and as the services load continues to increase, implementing the playbook, I think, is the bigger play for the channel right now, so having a value add on top of it. The playbook is different for every company.
So what do you look for in a really competent, capable Dooley channel partner?
I would say it's probably somebody who has had experience doing implementations on the sales enablement side, people that have built out playbooks for other organizations, people that are more oriented towards sales enablement, et cetera. Or you've also got like a whole sector that is specialized in Salesforce implementation. And what they'll do is they'll implement it, and the adoption still sucks. So for them, this is almost like the insurance card that their implementation is going to work better. So Dooley doesn't, you can set Dooley up in minutes, right? It's like 30 seconds to get yourself connected. We automatically wire up the Salesforce stuff behind the scenes and other CRMs as well in the near future. So that stuff isn't where you're going to make your bank. And if you're looking to make consulting revenue, then you're going to want to think about playbooks. You're going to want to think about templating and things like that.
Has the pandemic made attracting talent more challenging or less so for someone like you?
Well, given that I think we benefited from the pandemic in terms of like funding and noise and de-risking is what attracts talent. So I would say that we've probably done better than most in attracting talent. There are certain roles that are really hard to fill, really high demand roles. And I don't think that makes a difference whether you're in the pandemic or not, but certainly we're seeing people in some job descriptions that are maybe a little more risk averse to jumping and switching than we might have seen previously. But in other roles, we're seeing people, clamoring to get on board.
What are some examples of those high demand roles?
Oh gosh, they're mostly on the product side. Designers are tricky to hire. You want good designers, right? In a product-led growth world, you want really good designers because the product has to feel human. It has to have engaging experiences. It has to have those first bites that feel really amazing.
Randy, over to you.
Yeah. So talking about I'll call it the war on talent. So, getting talent, retaining talent. I know you're huge on the culture side.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe talk about how culture plays into the talent picture.
Yeah, I think that there's a couple of things that are important with regard to culture. One is you probably need to start your DE&I initiatives early. And that will help you to have, I think, both a more well-rounded organization where people feel comfortable coming to work, even if it's virtual, right? I think it's more evident when you're on a Zoom call, but probably even more evident when you're in an office if you don't have your initiatives in place early. I think that's one thing that we've done a very good job of, and it's sort of natural, and it becomes more natural and more organic over time if you set the foundation in place right away. You still want to hire, the best possible candidate for every single role, and so you have to factor that in. The other thing I would say that we've done is we've tried to make remote work to our advantage, right? And that's simple things like how you set a person up to be successful in a remote experience. So we have something called the PB&J fund, right? So personal benefits and joy. And so the PB&J fund is something that we offer to all new employees to help them set up their remote work experience to benefit them in a way that makes them feel really comfortable working remotely. We also take advantage of other things like Kumo Space, which is a virtual gathering, if you will, so that people can actually get together online and play games together and all sorts of different things. So it still feels, it's kind of like what Second Life should have been, truthfully. It's kind of like a combination of Zoom and Second Life. And so those things tend to work really well. And then you still have to do things that make people feel like they're a part of something, right? Whether it's, sending out the gingerbread house during the holidays for people to build with their kids so that their kids feel connected to the business and they feel like you're thinking about their family, which we actually are. It's building. So we just did a hack day, for example, and our hack day, normally the hack days are around things you do for the product. We did a hack day that was based on things that people wanted to do for the community, right? And some of the ideas that came up were around, reducing your carbon footprint and how you could contribute back to different companies that are actually helping to reduce the carbon footprint. And another one was around, and I know we all say this, we've said it a few times on this call already, around words like you guys. So we talk about diversity. Well, you guys is actually not very diverse, right? And we all say it. I'm in my 40s. It's how we grew up. My kids say it. My wife says it. And so those are words that we try to eliminate. And so another one of the initiatives was to create an application that actually was across Slack that collected all of the instances or utterances of the words you guys or hey guys, and gave you recommendations for alternate language. Great, simple initiatives that, again, maybe us old schoolers don't think so much about, but really make an impactful difference to today's organizations.
Yeah. Well, I think compared to Nour and me, you are the young schooler, not the old schooler. I know you kind of quickly touched on the whole DEI, and I know you're passionate about it. I know you said, hey, you got to just start with it, but talk a little bit more about some of your diversity initiatives and best practices.
Yeah. Again, I think that the best thing is to initiate it early and often across your organization. we do a lot of simple things like, increasing paid parental leave for our teams. And that's another way of being inclusive and diverse, right? We talk a lot about the types of people that we want to bring in. And it's not just, the color of your skin, sexual orientation, all those different things that make you diverse. It's your educational background, it's your interests, it's all sorts of things that make somebody diverse. So I think that starts in the interviewing process, right? And making sure you're asking the right questions to understand people and what superpowers they might bring to the equation, right? I do the same thing with investors. When I talk to you, Randy, what are your superpowers? And my answers that I'm looking for from an investor community in particular are all around, like, what can you do to help me improve my network and my reach? What can you do to help me improve my operational intelligence? What can you do to help me improve my access to future capital? And a series of other things that I'm looking for to try to identify whether or not an investor is actually going to be value add to me. I'm fortunate in that a lot of people want to invest in our company, and so I get to be picky, and that's why we pick folks like yourself to join our cap table. We do the same kind of thing with DE&I. We ask questions around, what could you bring to the table that will make us better and more well-rounded as people and as an organization? What's your background? How's it going to change the way we think?
Kris, one of the things I deeply believe in and I've written about is relationships go bad with misaligned expectations. Mm-hmm. How do you ensure you set the right expectations and recalibrate those, whether it's a high profile talent? I read about 3-4 great executives you've added to the team, and or an enterprise customer that has certain expectations of you, and you brought up customer success, and for whatever reason, whether it's an internal leader or an external customer, that expectations don't align. How do you address that? How do you make sure that doesn't happen, particularly as you guys are growing at such an accelerated pace?
There's you guys, David. We got
to work on that. You collectively.
Yeah. With regard, there's two questions, and there's one which is about how we would set that for our customers, and there's one that is how we set it for our teams. So on the team level, we plan weekly, we plan monthly, we plan quarterly across the organization. We map everything back to KPIs and OKRs so that everybody is aligned. And truthfully, that initiative is, a little over a year old now for us as an organization, which is probably based largely on the fact that we just weren't big enough to implement something like that before. It would have been too much rigor for not enough people. And now that we have that, it's important that you are able to disseminate that information across the entire organization so everybody is aligned. So, for example, our annual kickoff is next week, and that's where we roll out the things that we just signed up for as an organization across all parts of the strategy team. So from engineering to product to design to marketing to customer success, finance, HR, et cetera, and of course, sales, we all have things that we agreed to, whether they're revenue targets or performance targets or what have you. When you think about how things go off the rails on the customer side, usually that's a result of not asking the right questions up front or overselling, right? Realistically, or something better comes into the market that maybe can usurp you. But those things are rare if you maintain a good relationship and if you actually listen to your customers, right? We can't have our customers dictating our product roadmap. If it's one squeaky wheel, you can't have that impact like hundreds of other customers. But if you're seeing themes and patterns, build a customer community around that. Let's talk about that. Let's build some energy there so we can try to solve those problems together. And just, the car versus the horse analogy will often be the case, but we need to have really inventive entrepreneurial people that can say, okay, you told me you want a faster horse. I'm going to show you a car. Right.
Absolutely. I want to unpack that a second. Again, focused on your leadership approach. So I love the OKRs and weekly, monthly, quarterly alignment with everybody who signs up for a commitment. Let's say that commitment doesn't happen. Again, I'm trying to find out Kris's leadership style. What happens after a month or a quarter where, whether it's a sales or a finance or whatever, marketing, whatever that is. And the reason I bring it up is, Randy and I've seen a lot of CROs, a lot of CMOs get shot for no fault of their own for whatever reason, maybe the wrong product or wrong market fit that's not happening. So what happens when those commitments aren't met or commitments aren't delivered?
Well, so there's a degree of accountability that happens across all different parts of the business. One thing that we have locked in across the entire business is that it's not one pie that we're all taking a slice out of for our responsibility. We all have our individual pies, and those individual pies all need to be consumed by the people that are responsible for it. So that when you separate it out like that, it eliminates the blame game. You know what your part is in the operation. You can't say, well, my 12% was impacted by that other 88%. No, your pie is your pie. You need to deliver on that. And so by doing so, I think that we are able to hold people to greater account and get ahead of things in a way that probably makes it a little bit easier for us to make executive decisions. I mean, we all know what the executive decisions are, right? And equally reward those that are overperforming.
Got it. Randy, how did you find out about these guys and what did you get involved?
So we were, I don't know, through probably a combination of Jesse and I think Ed at Bold Start probably was the main one. And then I think you said before, as soon as I heard the, what the elevator pitch was, I'm like, well, that's a no brainer. And then no offense, you got to peel back the onion and say, okay, does Kriss have an ability to execute, which, obviously at the time you made the bet, yes, for sure. But there's, amazing growth and, continued success is great. So, obviously you talked a lot about Dooley. What about some of the sales tools that you guys use internally, Kriss?
Yeah. So we have a pretty consolidated tech stack now. We were, I think, a little bit spread thin for a while. And I think that's a natural thing that happens, particularly when you couple a really fast growing team with, I would say a larger than our scale should be permitted budget. And so we consolidated a lot of our needs around Zoom Info recently. I actually had a really interesting buying experience with Zoom Info, and I told them about my previous buying experience with them, and that actually helped them to understand why Dooley is important. So obviously Zoom Info is part of it. Dooley plays a big role in everything that we do for information distribution. Obviously, it is, I would say it's the workbook. Dooley's the workbook. And then if you start to ladder back from the workbook where people actually think about their deals and they think about what's going on and try to share that information more broadly with the organization, we still use Gong internally for call coaching and for understanding what was said. There's a difference between what was said and what was understood. Dooley, what was understood. Gong, what was said. We use LinkedIn Sales Nav, as you would expect, within our tech stack. We have Slack is a big part of how we communicate deals across the organization, just to make sure that information is being shared, and Dooley plugs into that. So that's nice. Salesforce is part of it as well. And then we have a couple of things that are more connected to the PLG motion, which are things like Reprise, which is an automated demo of your product that can adjust itself over time, so people can actually interact with our product and gain trust in it before signing up for a demo or booking a demo. And then on the marketing side, Pardot is part of the narrative there. And Salesforce is pretty heavily in there. Segment, Unbounce, Phantom Buster, Clearbit X, Canva, Mutiny. Those are I think the main things that we use. A lot of it is trying to help us to find lookalike audiences, to help us to find maybe some deeper contact information on an individual so that we can actually reach out to them. Again, with the sales memes and things that we do, you're getting 1,000 likes to a sales meme. That's 1,000 new people you can be contacting.
Love that. You mentioned you're in your 40s. What top 3 advice would you give Kriss in his 20s when he first started selling?
So one thing that I got better at over my career was being able to adjust me a little bit to the person that I was talking to. I call it being a better chameleon. I know it sounds kind of gross and sketchy, but it's true. Like, people like to buy from people that they find relatable. So trying to be relatable and trying to be able to be more accommodating to the person that's in front of you. They're not going to change who they are for you, right? You're the person that asked for their time. Be accommodating to it in as many different ways as you can. Come up prepared, all those different things. But equally, just sort of even adjusting my drawl, my cadence, all of those different things are based on who I'm talking to, which geography I'm in. You learn a lot of that. You want to sit in a boardroom in New York, you're probably talking differently than you are in California or other parts of the world. It's just, the styles adapt. So I think that's one thing. The other thing I would probably tell myself is it's okay to take chances. It's okay to be a bit entrepreneurial. Make sure that your chances are measured. So try to be as informed as you can in advance. It's one thing to have an idea. It's another thing to execute on it. So, when I started, I told you I had Asana before Asana, and that company was a product called Piranha that we had built. And if I had done Piranha again, I would have been a hell of a lot more educated before I actually started the effort to build the product. And who knows how that might have changed the course of my life. So yeah, do your homework, get out of the I think mode and get into the I know mode, which means you got to do your homework. You got to do research. And that's the same in sales. Do your homework, do your research beforehand, and you'll make for a better seller.
Yeah, for sure. What about now your role in, obviously you've got the sales DNA, but as a CEO, how do you kind of throttle what you're involved in or not involved in on the sales cycle side?
So when Michelle joined the company, the very first thing I had her do publicly was she did a public execution of me. I got her to fire me from sales. And I did that with great intent. It's very, very hard for somebody with a sales background not to want to be involved in everything that's related to a deal, right? It's your natural tendencies, it's your natural inclinations. I'm very passionate about selling. And I was an accidental salesperson. I thought I was going to be an advertising executive, right? Like I went on a completely different tear in my life. Maybe do the madman life minus the misogyny, alcoholism, and smoking. And then I ended up in sales, and it was a great career choice for me. I wasn't a natural salesperson when I first started, but I was relatable and honest. And so, yeah, Michelle fired me in front of the entire team from sales. And she can invite me into deals, but I can't invite myself. And I've made that really clear because I think otherwise I would be in the kitchen way too much, just puttering, like, hey, what's going on now? What's going on now? Obviously when there's deals that are imminent that I have been invited into, I'm going to get a little more curious and ask a lot more questions to stress test those deals. But thankfully I have a product in that we've built in-house that allows me to get a lot of the information that I need. So, yeah, I would say, my time now is spent mostly in two or three different roles. So one is working with my executive, right? And making sure that they're all well supported, that I'm informed, and that we have the things that we need done so I can block and tackle wherever possible. Two is working with my board / investor group and making sure that I'm staying in touch with them, making sure that we're leveraging the superpowers that we have from our investors, and equally just making sure that they're informed of what's going on as much as they need to be in order for them to be able to support us. You can give too much information to investors as well, right? People have pretty big portfolios these days. And then the third area where I spend my time is talent recruitment, right? I spend a lot of time making sure that we're bringing in the right people, and making sure those people are going to culturally align with us, as well as help us be better than we were without them.
That's great. So going from CEO selling down to maybe SDRs, what advice do you have for SDRs to get ahead in sales?
I think SDRs are so fundamental to selling now. I think, we've often said that the SDR career ladder is SDR, AE, manager, VP sales, whatever that ladder looks like. I think you're going to see more career SDRs now, people that are just top of funnel experts. And I hope that's the case because it is a valuable role and it's a different skill set. I don't know about you, but when you start being an AE, it's really hard to go full cycle, right? It's really hard to manage top and bottom of funnel holistically. When you start to get inundated with opportunities, guess where you're spending your time? closing those deals. Guess what gets sacrificed? Top of funnel. And so if you can build people that are super skilled at the marketing through to lead that just converts into an opportunity component, it's a great skill set. Why wouldn't you want to nurture that? I get that some people don't want to do that forever. I understand that. Cold calling and getting a lot of no's, it sucks, right? Everybody wants to be involved in scoring goals, but there's a lot of work that goes into scoring goals to get stuff into the top of the funnel too. I just see it evolving and becoming more and more important to organizations, even in the PLG world.
That's great. Nour, before I let you go, I just want to highlight Tucker had posted before from a LinkedIn user. Sorry, we don't have your name, but said he or she said, speaking of relatable, that's a prime attribute of Kris. So easy to listen to. Happy to recommend his solution. So
thank you.
Kudos and
thank you, LinkedIn user.
There you go. Nour?
Yeah, I number one, kudos. Sounds like you guys are doing some really, really interesting stuff. And,
Thanks,
and Kris, the hyper growth is an exciting one. What are you most concerned about in the next 12 to 18 months? What I hate what keeps you up at night because I'm thinking heartburn, but in terms of leading, in terms of managing this growth, managing the expectations of investors who didn't invest because they're your cousin or your right. They're looking for a return on that investment.
Of course.
What's kind of your biggest concern over the next 12 to 18 months?
Yeah. So I try to break my personal concerns for the business into 3 different parts. And one is making sure that I have some sort of a metric that keeps me accountable to my team. Right. So that's my employee / cultural measure that I monitor. One is making sure that I'm accountable to my investors. Usually, take this for what it's worth, all CEOs out there, but usually that has something to do with revenue, right? And if you have a free product, then it's to do with users, or number of ads that your product is perpetuating, like Facebook or whatever. And one is being accountable to my customers, right? And making sure that they have what they need. So usually that's like an NPS score or something along those lines that will help you to dig into that. We can see it usually by usage, right? In our product, we can see the depth of usage and the complexity of usage of a customer. The more sophisticated of a user, that tells me that my product is becoming simpler to consume. And that is really important to me. So onboarding experience through to like deep engagement. We see, just to give you a sense, we see between 3 and 5 hours of active usage on a daily basis inside of our product. Those are metrics that Slack would love to have. That's an off the chart metric. And so user engagement is really strong. Does that mean that we're doing everything right by our customer base? I hope so, but we still need to engage and ask, right? So again, employee, investor, user, I focus on those 3. And then on a personal side, balance, right? My kids are getting older. I got a 17-year-old. I've told Randy all sorts of stories about my eldest. And you got to be around for the moments because they're born, they start to crawl, they start to walk, they wreck your car, they move out.
And Nour, you appreciate this as a skier. His son, I'll say it, a prior non-skiing accident, but now is a Whistler working on his backflip. So go figure on that.
Nice.
Yeah, he's got a backflip score chart on the wall. He's successfully landed one and unsuccessfully landed on other parts of his body for the other 2.
I'm gonna build on that last question.
Yeah.
The 3 of us are gonna visit a year from now.
Yeah.
What did you regret the most?
Inevitably, my regrets will be not spending more time with my family, to be honest. I think that's the same with anybody who is really entrepreneurial. You can get really engrossed in your business, which is why I really, really try to unplug when it's not work hours, and really do try to spend time with my family as much as humanly possible, because they will grow up before your very eyes. And if your eyes aren't on them, they're still going to grow up. In terms of my work regrets, it's hard to say you're going to have regrets on the work front. So I'm not sure I have a good answer for you on that, David. And I think, as any good salesperson should do, when you don't know the answer, tell people you don't know. I don't know what my regrets are going to be.
I love it. Randy, I've asked all the questions I want to ask. Anything else you want to know from Kris?
No, I appreciate it, Kris. Been fantastic. Any closing words of wisdom for the audience, Kris?
I guess my words of wisdom are, invest in yourself. Invest heavily in yourself over the coming year. Make yourself better. I had a conversation. So we also do these one-on-one coffee chats internally where it's, it can be anybody paired with anybody else. It's a product called Donut. It's a pretty cool product, actually. I was talking to somebody on our CS team today who's in charge of like education of our customers and our user base. And we kind of unpacked our life a bit, right? If you're lucky and you'll live to be 100, which maybe that's not lucky, maybe that's unlucky. You get 36,500 days on this planet, right? Of which your time as an adult is where you're fruitful. So take away the last 15 years and the first 15 years. So the real fruitful years of your life, that maybe accounts for like 25,000 hours, of which a third of it is spent sleeping if you're doing things right. You got 22,000 ish or 20,000 hours, 15,000 hours, maybe 15,000 hours of useful time. Use it, live it. Like that's not a lot of time when you start thinking about it that way. And so I would just encourage people to really lean in and enjoy the person they're becoming and really try to invest in that person. Nice comment from Hueme, who just had a little baby and was off on parental leave. One of our engineers, being the best version of yourself at the end of every meeting is a much needed reminder. Yeah, try to be the best version of yourself. That's what we try to do. So our vision is to help people become the best version of themselves at work.
That's great.
Right?
That's a good plug in. Nour has Curve Benders behind there, which is a book I'd recommend. See at the bottom of mine. This is Randy's.
Yeah, I got a signed copy of that.
There you go. But it helps everybody learn more and sell more. Likewise with sales community as well. So thanks to our sponsor Sendoso. Kris, you've been fantastic. Nour, always a pleasure co-hosting with you, and certainly wish everybody fantastic 2022. Thanks for watching. Next week we have Kris Riley, who's CRO of Automation Anywhere. Great long time, very successful sales leader, business executive. I'm sure he'll be fantastic as well. So until next time, thanks a lot. Tell people, spread the word, check this out, and have a great one. Nour, anything else?
That's it. Good to see you, Kris. Randy, always.
Pleasure.
Right. Thanks. Take care. Peace.